Aha, we are recording. All right. And I do have to say, the reason we record is so that I can put this up on the members section of our website. You can go back and look at it over and over and over again. Go to those parts you think are important for you, and it's always going to be there for you as a resource. All right, that's important. The other thing I must emphasize is that you need to take care of yourself here. Okay, this is kind of a legal thing that I'm saying. I don't know what your issues may be. I don't know what kind of conversations might trigger something within you, etc. So that if something for you becomes too intense, or it's a subject matter that is getting to you, stop the webinar, go back to the recording where you can stop at your own comfort, and so on. So, but take care of yourself. We're doing our best here for everybody, but I don't know what triggers whom, where, and we may be talking about some adult type stuff. Okay, we have said that. So let me invite, just a minute, here we go. I'm gonna unmute Sherry. Good morning, Sherry. Sherry Baker.
Hi, Gary. Hi, everybody.
There you are. Okay. Sherry and I have had a couple of discussions, prior to this. We often do that. And for those who don't know, Sherry is the director of the Gary Craig official EFT training center in the English language. We also have it in other languages as well: French, Portuguese, German, Dutch, this kind of thing. And so she's always assisting me, etc. She's also my personal spiritual mentor and one of the best teachers I think I've ever seen. That's why she's doing what she's doing and doing the very top level certification process. So Sherry, you and I spoke earlier about this idea of what is the best way, or what is a way, how can we ask the unseen therapist to point us towards issues? Now, we talk on our webinar about asking questions, and we get down to specific events, and when's the first time you remember so-and-so, and these are all questions designed to get to specific events underlying the larger issues. But we can also ask unseen therapists. You can say, hey, unseen therapist, tell me, what's the issue here? I don't want to go ask a bunch of questions and maybe get it and maybe not, and trial and error and all that. Just tell me, okay? Is there a way, Sherry?
Sure. There's lots of ways. And in truth, without us issuing that demand, tell me, she's likely dropping them in beautifully anyway.
Yes, and the issue is not that she's not telling us. It's that we don't know how to hear.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So you and I talked about a metaphor that would be useful here. Actually, there's a couple of them. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And one of those is the radio, right? The radio. Okay. Now, when you tune into a radio, of course, and this is an old metaphor, but it works really nicely here. You have your little dial, and you move your dial, and it comes to certain frequencies. There are all kinds of frequencies going on. And for our purposes, the frequency on our personal radios are filled with things like, what am I going to do about Uncle Charlie? How am I going to get that promotion? My shoulder hurts and nothing, all it does is bug me all day long. What about my dental work? What about my financial situation? It's this long stream of frequencies, if you will, that we are constantly dialing in, and we are constantly tuning into them. And one of those frequencies is the unseen therapist, but she gets drowned out. Yes?
Yes. Yes, we should understand that she is always broadcasting. We don't have to demand that she speaks. She's always speaking. She's always trying to reach us. But like you say, especially those of us that are older, when you're trying to tune to that radio station and you're not quite on it, you're just a little to the left, a little to the right, and you're hearing all that static. And it's like, whoa, why can't I just get right on that station? I I believe, and we discussed that static, all that distortion is what you were just saying. It's the what am I going to make for dinner? Or is so-and-so home on time? And what do I have to do tomorrow to get ready for my presentation? We've got all this stuff that causes that static so that we can't hear Unseen Therapists quite as clearly as we could.
It is the static of separation. Would I say that right?
Yes, yes.
We believe we're separate, so we have all these separate issues that are seemingly very important to the right up on top. They are the frequencies that drown out everything else.
Yes.
And we shift from frequency to frequency, but it's always our personal separated concerns that tend to dominate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Our sickness, our negative beliefs come from separation, come from the thought of separation from our Creator and from each other. And healing is in joining.
Yes. it's not in competing, with whoever you're competing with, and there's a lot of competition going on. We compete for resources, we compete for love, we compete for money, we compete for jobs, it goes on and on and on. We are competing, and as a result, we are set in conflict with each other. Okay. Mm-hmm. We have more conflict with some than others, but nonetheless.
Yes.
That's how it is. Okay, so we have this dial, we have this radio, and we have all of these personal separated concerns that speak from the separation belief. And here we have this lone voice out there saying, wait a minute, there's a oneness thing that's more important than all of this. Okay. And we're not hearing it. Okay, or we don't hear it all the time. Now, interestingly enough, we can call on the unseen therapist, and many people here have already. And even though you may not sense that you are in perfect communication or something like that, you're not having a Hollywood loving moment and all this stuff going on and bands playing and harps and beauty and all of this, as long as we're tuned in, she's listening, and to the extent we have our issues on the table, she's able to take care of it. And we've seen this whether or not we're having our Hollywood moment, whether or not we really know that she's there. Okay, but we know by the results of that. Okay, we see it with people on our webinar, we see it in the things I describe in our newsletter, and we're going to be seeing it in these new groups that are forming. If you don't know it already, we've already established these groups, or the facility to create groups. We've got a couple of groups already started. You can go to that facility on our website, join groups, start your own group. But see, when you have these little groups, then we have several people, 3, 4, 5, whatever number of people meeting with a common idea of practicing tuning in to the unseen therapist. That's what we're doing. Okay, so we practice that, and when we have the joint effort, because love is best when shared, when we have the joint effort in these groups, going towards helping one person with their issue, for example, we're more likely to see what's going on. We're more likely to understand the unseen therapist is there, and so on. I'm rambling. Sherry, do you have any thoughts?
No, that's
okay.
Yeah, that's how we will tune in better. The more we can release whatever is in front of our ability to connect with her. And we have, as you said, a whole lot of filters. All our worries about finances and our job and our family and our sore body, whatever. If the extent to which we can release all of that, all of those blocks, then we will be able to hear her more clearly.
All right. Now, with that in mind, as sort of a preamble, I promised in my letter to everybody yesterday that in addition to other questions we're going to be answering here a little later on, I'm going to provide a metaphor for people where the ability, where you can practice asking the unseen therapist to point you to issues that are important. We can ask in the way I'm going to tell you in a moment, we can ask the unseen therapist, we can say, well, what is the cause of blank, whatever it may be, okay? And the metaphor I'm going to give you is a way to, hear that. You have to practice it some more and more, and the more you do this, the more you will hear it or understand it, okay? And here's the metaphor, okay? Imagine yourself sitting in a movie theater. You're the only one there, so you don't have the distractions of the outside world. It's a quiet movie theater. And on the screen is nothing but white. There's no movie. Nothing is on the screen except white. And so you sit in the screen, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the metaphor first, and then we're going to practice it, okay? I'm going to tell you the metaphor, I'm going to give you an example or two, and then we'll practice it. So there's the quiet movie screen. Now you can write on the movie screen in your mind's eye, what is the cause of X? What do I need to look at now? I mean, you can design your own question, but what is the cause of X, whatever that may be? You know, what is the cause of my vision problem? What is the cause of, you know, my shoulder pain? What is the cause? Why am I always having all this anxiety? Why can't I stand up in front of people in public, speak without jamming up? You know, all these things. Okay, and so you put the question up there, and then you get quiet, and the quieter you can get, the better. And you listen. Metaphorically, you're trying to tune into this radio, if you will. Okay, you're trying to get to the right frequency. You're trying to get to the unseen therapist's frequency. Now, when you do this, especially as a beginner, no telling what you're going to get. There is no way practically for you to discern whether whatever's coming up is your own self-talk, your own ego talking, whatever, or something from the unseen therapist. So you do this for a minute or two, and you just write down whatever shows up. Now, whatever shows up doesn't have to be just visual like a movie screen. Remember, a movie also has sound. So it could be sounds, voices, words, this kind of thing. And because we have sounds and visual things, movies often create feelings. So you can end up with a feeling of, where did this hatred come from? Why do I have this warm spot or hot spot in my abdomen? You know, why is my ankle hurting? This kind of thing. Okay, so you can have any number of things that would show up. What you do is when they show up, you just write it down. You know, just a word or two, just to remind you, a word or two. So what I would suggest you do, because we're going to practice this, is that you have a paper and pencil handy. If you don't have one, maybe you can go get one while I'm talking about this. Now, I want to give you an example of how this worked, and then we'll practice it. Just a few days ago, I was working with one of our members. And there was a physical issue that was going on, and so I was trying to ask her about, you know, her past history and when did this start, and I was trying to look for specific events that might be on target. And really wasn't doing, I mean, we really weren't finding very much. That doesn't mean it wasn't there, but we weren't finding it. So I said, okay, let's try this. So the two of us did this together. You can do it solo, or you can do it together in your groups, which I would recommend, okay? But you can do it solo. Anyway, the two of us got quiet, and I gave her this metaphor about the movie screen. And we put on the screen, what is causing my physical ailment? Okay. And then we just got quiet. And she would write down whatever she saw, whatever she experienced, and I would write down what I experienced. Now, she experienced two things that she wrote down. The first one I'm not remembering, but the second one had to do with punishment, something about being punished, deserving to be punished, something like that. Okay. And I didn't know she was writing that down. When I was doing it, what I was writing down was, I remember I saw it was a short, heavy set. I called it the round man. I saw a little round man, so I wrote that down, round man. Okay. Then I was quiet, not knowing whether or not that's the unseen therapist speaking or just some random stuff that my radio was picking up. Okay. Radio dial. And then I tuned into a ship, floating on the water, a ship. Okay. There was a little red wagon. Okay. I got 2 or 3 words that came in, but I don't remember them at the moment, but 2 or 3 words came in and I wrote them down. Then I got the item balloons. I wrote that down. I remember my self-talk at the time being, balloons? I mean, how traumatic can you get? Okay. That was my own self-talk to me. I was actually, and I should know better, overriding, in a way, the idea of balloons. Okay, we're looking for something that's big time, and it's not balloons. Okay. Anyway, then there were 2 or 3 other things that I had this list. Okay. So we stopped our little session with the unseen therapist, and I asked her for her examples or what she got, and she said this one thing, and then she said the punishment thing. Okay, all right. Great. And then I started talking about the things that I saw, the round man, the ship, etc. And then when I came to balloons, she stopped me. She says, that's it. Balloons. Balloons? Okay. All right. What about balloons? And then she tells me this story that she had forgotten, okay, until it got brought up here. But when she was like 7 or 8 years old, she was fascinated by some balloons that you could blow up. And she put one of the balloons in her mouth and blew the balloon up. At that moment, her parents saw her blowing up the balloons. And the parents, because of their belief about the balloons, panicked. They thought, this was their belief at that time, and this was decades ago, okay, that she would, because she put her mouth on some foreign object, she will be having infections. And they literally called a doctor to come in and give her injections about this. And so, I mean, the big message to a young 7 or 8-year-old is, my God, the world is not safe. Even blowing up balloons is a big deal, okay? Now, we may look at that and say, well, blowing up a balloon, but it isn't what happened. It's our response to what happened. And she had quite an issue about that. I mean, she was getting worked up about it. On a 10-point scale, a 9 or 10, about the mere memory of it. And here's a woman in her 70s who's now looking back at something at age roughly 7. Okay. And so we started dealing with that. And so we brought in unseen. I equated that to the idea that she had somehow this punishment thing. And I could see the lack of safety and punishment. She was a bad girl someplace, or so she thought, and whatever, and she's being punished. And so we brought all that into an unseen therapist's issue, unseen therapist session to deal with that. We talked about it. What does that mean? What can we put on the table about blowing up balloons, having been infections? What does the doctor mean? The panic of your parents, and we got into all of that. We put a lot of details on the table, brought in unseen therapists, and all of the intensity about that, as we might expect, just faded. Okay. left. Okay. Now, that's the idea of it. That's the example of it. We're going to practice it in a minute, but I want to give Sherry an opportunity to say something if other thoughts came up. Sherry?
I was just thinking, in that case, the balloon was rather literal because it had to do with literally blowing up a balloon. But sometimes it can be metaphoric. And I don't know how, in that case, it could be metaphoric. I have had the experience before of seeing the blank screen and seeing something happening on the screen that really didn't make much sense, didn't really apply to anything. And it had to do with somebody opening an oven and pulling out a cake and checking the cake, and it wasn't ready. And they put it back in the oven and closed the door and walked away. And I thought, what on earth does that have to do with anything? And it had to do with not being ready. So it was just a metaphor for the words not being ready. And still, instead of seeing not being ready on the screen in words, I saw that little vignette. Yeah. And I said, what on earth does it mean? I thought, oh, not yet ready. Okay, so something was not yet ready. And that's what we use to apply to the event.
Yeah. And so there's some skill in this, some interpretation that goes on and this kind of thing. But even for beginners, if you'll sit down and write these messages that come in, but as I may have said earlier, many of them are memories, which means typically specific events, okay, that show up. I've seen that many times using something like this, and when we ask unseen therapists, to point things out, they tend to get pointed out with memories. I'll ask the client to do this. We weren't using this movie screen thing. We were just simply asking. And what comes up is some memory. Oh, I just now remember so-and-so. Well, that's what happened with my 70-some-odd-year-old client that I just gave an example for. While it was the balloons that came up in my mind, in her mind, it was a memory. Showed up, off we go, specific event, and there we go. Okay. All right. Now, we're going to practice this. And the first thing everybody needs to do that wants to practice here is to just pick out some kind of issue that you're dealing with. And in this case, it can be, and maybe should be, a general type issue, like my anxiety, my fear of, my pain in my whatever part of your body, my difficulty breathing, my vision, my whatever. Okay. Those are things where you're looking for specific events, causes underneath them. Okay. So either write that down or make a mental note of that, whatever that may be. Okay. And then to prepare us, and we don't normally have to do this. The more you get experience with it, we're going to do a little tapping to help quiet us down, help get us quiet for this. So it's a way of taking our radio and let's take all or most of those competing stations, and let's see if we can't just sort of lower the volume on them like that. Okay. So if you would tap along with me and say, even though I may have difficulty getting quiet and lowering the volume on my chatty radio, I deeply and completely accept myself. Okay. My chatty radio, 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 my chatty radio. Okay. Now I'm going to do one more time just because we have a little time to do it. We'll just do it. Okay. Even though I still have some difficulty with my chatty radio, I deeply and completely accept myself. Remaining chatty radio problem. 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 Okay. With that, then, sit back, take a deep breath if you like. We're going to get in the relaxed state. Close the eyes, and shift your focus to this loving moment that you, by now, hopefully are used to. Spend a little time with that. This is a way of inviting unseen therapists, saying, hey, we're open here, so bring your frequency to my radio, please. And now as we sit in that movie theater, all alone, no distractions, we look at the screen and it's just white. Great big screen, it's all ours. Great big white screen, nothing on it. And we put on it, with our own intention, some words. What is the cause of, and then fill in whatever issue it is you'd like to deal with. What is the cause of that? And I'll give you a little bit to do that. Okay, and now we're going to shift. We've already put on the screen what it is we want. We've communicated that. Okay. We may or may not have any direct experience right now with the unseen therapist. Doesn't matter. We've asked. And now we're going to ask for her to show us these causes. We've already asked the question, but now we're going to give her a chance to show us these causes. And we're going to do so in a way where we're going to recognize that, yeah, we're still human, and yeah, we haven't perfected everything here, and yes, we got more to learn, and so it's not going to be perfect and all of that. But go ahead, give me memories, give me things I can see, things I can hear, words, little vignettes. And I'm going to do this for 2 minutes, and just with your paper and pencil, or if you don't have one at this point, just remember whatever shows up. The important thing here is we don't judge it. It showed up, we put it down. It showed up, we put it down. We don't judge. We don't override or anything. Here it comes, put it down. All right. 2 minutes, do your best. Okay. Now, I want to discuss for a moment what I saw, what happened with me in this particular thing. Okay. I'm going to ask Sherry about hers. But I would also like to ask you about yours. This is where we can share. This is where we can have, you can raise your hand. So I'm asking you to do that now. If you have something to share or a question or something, raise your hand. You say, well, I didn't get anything, or I got this or this, or whatever your questions may be. We want to hear it. We want to respond to it. That's how we learn, when we find out how others are succeeding and or stubbing their toe. Okay, so raise your hands. And I see Colleen is in there, but we'll call on Colleen in a minute, and whoever else. Now, I'm going to talk about what happened with me. Now, I'm dealing with the behavior at the moment of someone that is irritating me. Okay, and what do I do? What do I do about this issue? Okay. And I'm used to doing this, so I don't have as much trial and error as maybe a newcomer would have. But I had a few things come up. But out of all of that came memories of myself behaving the same way when I was a child. You know, I was doing, although I was doing it, you know, in grade school and junior high school and things like that, and not as an adult. It was pointing out to me, Gary, you're judging and you're doing the same. You've done the same thing. Understand rather than try to criticize. Now that's a message I've heard. I can't tell you how many times. Okay, and it's one of those things that you know, you get better at as time goes on. So anyway, that was mine, but you know, it was pointed. I mean, that was an unseen therapist frequency. She showed up, okay, because I'm used to it, etc. She may be showing up for you in the same way, and you may not be used to it, but I give you my example. Sherry, what happened with you?
I have a tiny little physical issue, not a big deal, and I thought, well, I'll ask what the cause is, and I saw a picture of a cow. So I said, okay, dairy products.
Oh, okay.
And then I said, you know, anything else you'd like to add? And then I saw a picture of a couple that I know, and the husband was not treating the wife very well, and that does or did cause me some upset at seeing that.
Okay.
So that
now
could be a problem.
You don't know precisely whether or not the dairy thing or this other relationship issue has something directly to do, you know, with the physical issue you were talking about. You
Right.
wouldn't know that, but
No.
they are pointers to something, pointers to possible. I mean, a diet change, maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
They are. I'm sure you can try it.
Yeah.
They are pointers to maybe something about this other relationship issue that is within yours. So what does it remind you of with you, kind of thing? So there are pointers. Now they may be just your own ego stuff and your own chatter, you know, going on. But the more you do this, and the more you start paying attention and start giving it credibility, the more you're going to find this. Now we have thank you. We have a number of hands here. Let me unmute Colleen. There you are, Colleen.
Yes, hi.
Hi, what happened?
Very quick. I got the answer okay, I was asking, why are my nerves chewing on themselves? Why are my nerves physically not responding the way that they should? And the answer that I got was punishment. And I kept on coming around it and kept on getting the answer, punishment. So what I need to do, I think, is, you said pointer. I have to go back and say, okay, punishment. What does this mean? can you give me some more information about it? Because that is a good start, but I need more from you. Thank you.
Did you get more, or you just ended with that question?
I need to go back. I need to go back and then ask that again.
Okay. Now you are hosting one or two of these groups going on. Okay, and so you can bring that up to the group if you want to. The group can go ahead and tune into you. They can see a movie screen for you, and they can come up with stuff as well that would start giving you more pointers. Now, on the punishment thing, that could mean a lot of things. That could mean for some reason you're not aware of, you are punishing yourself, or maybe you have developed the belief from childhood, from someplace, that you deserve punishment. I mean, we have a lot of stuff that goes on, and we're not always able to pinpoint exactly. But these are clues. Very good. Anything more, Colleen?
No, it just, I know what I need to do next. I know
Okay.
what I need to work on more.
All right. So you got a pointer, and off you go. Now, let me back up a second here, just before we have Colleen go. These pointers can save you. I said this early on in this whole thing. These pointers can save you loads of time in asking a bunch of questions and trying to dig in, when did things first start and all of this, and what does that remind you of, etc., to get down to specific events. These pointers can be a lot more efficient. Bingo, here it is. Okay. Not always, but the more we can tune in to this information, the more efficient we're likely to be. That's one of my points. Okay. Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you.
Whoops. Darn. Here we go. Ann Ryan. Are you there? Well, okay, I didn't do it right. Ann Ryan, unmute. Ann Ryan, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Gary.
Hi.
Hi.
So what happened?
So what happened was I picked an issue, which was, big issue, my anxiety around money, lack of, not enough, wanting more, needing more. That was what I put up on the movie screen.
Uh-huh.
Closed my eyes, went in, and straight away I got an image of a young child, probably age 4 or 5, but I knew it was a young me. And I kept getting just little images, and each time I thought, okay, don't jump ahead, just kind of stay with it. So there was the 4 or 5-year-old child. The next feeling I felt it was her feeling anxious. Then there was an image of darkness, quiet and peace, but it felt okay. It didn't feel a scary darkness. And then there was an image of a bedroom and the curtains closed. And then the word that came was disturbed, and the next word that came was unexpectedly. Then came the word fright. Now I kind of knew where this was going. Then came, the real sense that the curtains were opened and it was bright outside. And then the last 3 phrases that came was, there was no transition, too sudden and not gentle enough. Now, the simple story behind it, which there's probably hundreds of events of, is my mum used to wake me like that in the morning. It went from quiet to the door opening, get up, you're late, must go to school. Whoosh, curtains open, and it just frazzled my nervous system. So I know what it is, and it's not a big T trauma, but there were hundreds of them, and that's what came up in answer to the question.
All right. Now, what's interesting is at least my engineering mind wants to know, well, what's that got to do with, money anxiety? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that may not be apparent to you for the moment. Maybe you can make that bridge, maybe you cannot, but at least you have a pointer to something that needs to be resolved. It's an anxiety issue.
Yeah.
Now, money will give us anxiety, especially if there's less of it than we'd like to have. So I can now see, just by talking, a bridge between that form of anxiety and the current anxiety. Now, from a financial point of view, it's one thing, of course, to be concerned about one's financial point of view. If you're not, you're out on the street someday eventually if you don't do what you need to do. Okay. Yes. But also the issue here is if you're having anxiety about it, that anxiety does not really help you solve the problem. It
No.
tends to get in the way, actually. It tends to get in the way of clear decision making.
Hmm.
Okay. So anyway, good. Anything more, Anne?
No, but I think it's a lovely metaphor. It's a lovely thing to work with.
Well, I would love to have everybody here work more with it. I want to hear more about what you're doing with this, because this, I think, has the potential to open, especially for newbies, a whole new door. Okay, so let us see. All right.
Gary,
Yeah. I'm sorry, Sherry. Yes.
this is just so interesting to me, and it points to the advantage of group work, because we just heard from Colleen, and she wanted to say why are my nerves kind of chewing on me? Is that correct, Colleen? And then
She's muted, but no, she's not muted.
very
Go ahead.
next, yeah, she's nodding her head.
Yeah,
The very next person, Anne, talked about something where being awakened abruptly frazzled her nerves. And I thought that's interesting. The very next person talked about how her nerves got frazzled, and that may apply to the previous person, Colleen, who might say, what happened in my life where my nerves got abruptly frazzled? So Spirit was telling me, hey, this is what happens when you work with a group. Unseen therapists could drop in the previous answer in the very next person and give you a hint as to what might be your issue.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Great. Okay. Now let's move on to Katie.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah, okay. This has been a kind of an interesting thing for me because I've been on vacation, so I haven't followed up on what happened to me about a week and a half ago when suddenly I had a feeling I knew what was causing the issue in my right hand. And I was doing not EFT, but some personal energy work. And I felt like it was a past life experience, and was given a little bit of a scene with this gentleman of what may have happened. Now, I guess my question is, I've had a few things coming up in the past week. As a matter of fact, while I was traveling, I suddenly started to have an issue in that hand that really did scare me because it came up so suddenly. And I thought, oh my gosh, this almost looks like blood poisoning from a bite, except that I knew that that I've had that pain before, and because I'm on a homeopathic, it sometimes comes and goes. So anyway, today my thoughts were, while you were speaking, I had written down, the past life thing, which may or may not be true. And the other words that kind of came to me were, and they kind of come to me as thoughts, because that's how I process. So it came to me as elephants, chains, and spider. And so I'm wondering,
elephants, chains, and spiders.
And yes.
Okay. All right.
Now I don't know if I'm making, I'm back to if I'm making some of this up because when I saw this streak going through my hand, it was almost like, oh, I know someone who was bitten by a poisonous spider and started to get blood poisoning, and that's kind of how it looked. And that's exactly how my hand looked when this pain started. And then I started to do energy work on it, and it stepped back. I've been working on this issue for a long time. So it seems like it's deep.
Well, okay. So in all of that, I heard elephants, chains, and spiders. Okay.
Right.
And you don't know, of course, whether that's just your chatter showing up and whether this is really
That's what
guidance.
I'm afraid of, yes.
Yeah. Well,
Chatter.
okay. Okay. So thank you for the words. That's what you're afraid of. Eventually, as we practice this and we get more and more experience and something comes up, eventually they go, oh, right on. Maybe not this time, but another time, etc. We'll start developing trust, and we won't default to a phrase like, that's what I'm afraid of. Because, and that's a common, very common phrase, by the way, Katie, because until we develop trust, we're sort of afraid of, well, that I'm not really tuning into the right station here, all my chatter is going on, etc. But let me ask you this. What does any of the items, elephants, chains, or spiders, remind you of that might be a problem in your life?
A problem in my life. Maybe I would go to the word chains. My first thought back before we started to discuss it was spiders, because I used to have a fear of spiders. But I think with tapping, and I've kind of overcome that. I'm not fond of them. I just kind of walk the other way now. I don't freak. But it just felt like chains might be somehow tied in, but I'm not sure how.
Well, chains to me, and just because it means something to me doesn't mean has to mean something to you. I'm just trying to give you possibilities here. But chains to me, it talks about restriction. Somehow or other, we're restricted. We can't do things. We're not free like we'd like to be in some part of our life. Okay, we're not free because of a relationship. We're not free because of some beliefs, for example. Anyway, you can just take that and run with it. It may or may not be a pointer from Unseen Therapist, but the more we practice, and thank you for that, thank you. But the more we practice, the more we get in tune. That's a good term for now. Okay, Katie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, Rena McGill.
Yes. So the question I had was, what is the reason for the shaking or tremor, especially in my left hand? The images I saw were a kettle, probably about a 2-quart saucepan, a raggedy dishcloth, snow, and then a lightning bolt from the left to the right to my temples.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a nice portfolio, a nice rainbow of things. Did any of them say, "Oh, there's something there"?
No, but what did say something to me was the fact that everyone that's spoken so far has talked about the same thing no, not exactly the same, but something similar in their anxiety, their hand, and it's like the kettle collects everything.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know how that may apply to your life. Are you somebody who collects everything and never throws anything away?
Oh, no, quite the contrary.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. I don't know where that would go. Now, if we had time, you and I could discuss this in more detail, and we could start pointing some things out. This may be a case where all it was for you, Rena, was just simply practice, okay? And you didn't tune in to Unseen Therapist now. But see, understand, what you did was you had the intention of doing that.
Right.
You may or may not have succeeded. We don't know that yet. We are beginners here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You try it again. You listen to other people. Some of the other things that other people have said about hands and nerves and stuff like that, and Sherry has said it and other people, those may start triggering you. That's some of the value of group work. Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm thinking, because I'm thinking that everything that I've heard so far is contributing to the eventual answer that I will get from Unseen Therapist. I feel there's a thread going through the process.
Well, And in that way, Sherry's comment is right on point here, because this is a form of group work. And Unseen Therapist is around. Now, it's interesting that the people that have showed up so far have some intertwining with their issues, okay? And the images and things like that. So anyway, so great. Anything more, Rena?
No, just thank you for what you're doing.
All right, thank you. Bye. Now, let me see. Let us talk to Suzanne, then Kristen, then Jim, and then we'll move on. Okay, hold on a second here. Suzanne.
Hi, Gary.
Hi.
This is just an excellent one for me because I have been going through something for the last 5 weeks where I keep getting sick. I get better for 2 days and I'm sick for 2 days. And I've been asking myself, why is this happening? Why do I keep getting sick? So that was my question. And
Wait, one second, Katie. If you could move your screen a little bit. We only see you from here up. Yeah, good, great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's no problem. So the first thing I got when I looked on the big screen was beliefs. And then I noticed tingling in my chest. And then I saw a doorway. So I opened the doorway, or the door opened itself, I don't know. And I went through, and then I was 3 years old. That was the next thing I wrote down, 3 years old. And the next thing was a feeling of being attacked as a 3-year-old. And then we stopped.
Do you have any conscious recollection of being attacked as a 3-year-old?
No, not specifically.
All right.
I have a sense that as a child, I frequently got kind of nailed out of the blue, not really knowing why I was suddenly in trouble or being attacked. That's about as far as I can go.
Well, okay. Let's just assume for the moment that those items is the Unseen Therapist pointing stuff out to you. We're going to make that assumption, okay?
I'm happy to work.
Fine. I tell you what. Even if that isn't Unseen Therapist speaking to you, okay?
Yes.
It did bring up issues that needs resolving. Would I not be correct?
I'm sure.
Yeah, because here we are, a 3-year-old who was frequently nailed, to use your words, criticized, let's say, rejected, let's say. I mean, I'm throwing stuff up here as possibilities. Okay.
Yep.
And those are all forms of attack. Attack doesn't necessarily have to be physical attack or sexual attack or something like that. It doesn't have to be that. Okay.
Yes.
So these are attacks, and as I often say here, we're not so concerned with what happened as to our response to what happened. Okay.
Yes.
So,
and just quickly, the response I was getting right there is the same one I have around this. Why am I getting sick? What's going on? What did I do? I don't understand. It's the same feeling as the feeling of my 3-year-old.
okay.
I don't get it. Why?
Okay. But from there, if you and I, Suzanne, were having sessions right now, yes, we could go to a specific event, okay, and pick a specific event out of all of that when you were nailed, okay,
Right.
And do something with it. But my intuition says to me there's probably more to it than just that one specific event. Because this kind of thing, when a child is nailed, belittled, ridiculed, rejected, or whatever other terms you want to use in this general area, they end up with things like, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, all these other things. And to carry that belief around at how whatever intensity that belief resides
Mm-hmm.
creates conflict within you, and that
Yes.
that conflict, begs for resources from your immune system to handle. Okay,
Yes.
and it's so routine to you, typically you're not even aware of it, and
Mhm.
so your immune system doesn't take care of whatever you're getting sick about now. Okay.
Yeah.
Now that's me stretching the point a little bit, trying to add some stuff in there that may be there,
Yeah. The thing that came up really strongly for me there is I don't deserve. I don't
Okay.
deserve to be healthy. I don't deserve to be happy. That's all part of that. I'm not good enough, or there's something wrong with me.
Yes. Yeah. And now you have just opened a great big thing, and a lot of which comes from childhood, and you can go back to many specific events. Now you can start asking unseen therapists, well, out of all those specific events, is there a big one or two or three that, that I can get to, or do I have to wade through lots of them? Okay. You can ask that question as well.
Great.
Is there
Thank
one?
you.
Is there one major one? You may or may not get the answer, but you're practicing, and the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Hold on. Over your hand. All right. Kristen, I don't know if you lowered your hand, Jim, but I don't see your hand raised anymore. But anyway, Kristen, go ahead.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm finding this really interesting, the theme that's running through all this, because the thing that I asked for help with is actually sort of my difficulty relaxing into the help being provided by the unseen therapist. So, for example, when I know it's time to go work on something, there's a part of me that says, like, ooh, don't relax, don't go there, don't let this help in, basically. And did you want to say something to that?
No.
Okay. And that's sort of been a theme for me. I've been able to get things like healed, but that's been an ongoing theme for me for as long as I can remember. And so when I put the question on the screen, what is this about? I had several memories come up from when I was a kid, and they were all related to instances where I sort of let myself feel okay, and then boom, something happened that was big, like my parents told us they were getting divorced, or my first serious boyfriend broke up with me, or something like that. And I had sort of been like feeling good and relaxed and like everything was okay, which is how I feel when I'm connected spiritually. And then like, boom, something came and took it away.
Yeah.
So that all made sense. The question I guess I have, you sort of just answered, which was when there's a lot of memories, what do you do? Which is, I guess, maybe ask for the biggest one to start.
But you can also, you can formally ask, yes. What I find is that if I'm dealing with, like if you were my client, for example, and we're having sessions and you said, well, we did this and I have 6 memories come up, I would probably just say, well, pick one. Pick whatever one seems to be the most intense.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just start with that. And quite often, if we do that one well and thoroughly with the details and put lots on the table, etc., the other 5 or 6 starts to collapse because there's a commonality among them. Okay.
Right.
Otherwise, then we'll go to another or another and another, etc. So that's a way to do it. That's the way I've been doing it. I may now just stop and say which one of these is the big one, and we'll put the movie screen up there and do that and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Other times, I simply use my intuition. My intuition being my own ability to listen, tune in to unseen therapists, and my intuition will go like that. And here we are, we can go. But that's experience. That's experience. Okay.
Right.
All right.
So that makes sense. And I guess my part 2 with that is sort of what you're alluding to with putting things on the table. One of the questions I have in general about this process is, so if I what makes it so that unseen therapist has to have like a specific event? So if I know here's my problem, what makes it so that I can't just say, here's my problem, can you just clear this problem for me as I'm aware of it now?
Okay. Good question. Thank you. That comes back, and Sherry, by the way, if you've got comments on these things, let's hear from you and so on. But let me respond to this. One of the things that's in my book, The Unseen Therapist, is a segment there where I talk about the fact that one thing the unseen therapist will not do is interfere with your free will, meaning your free will to believe whatever you want to believe.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to believe, for example, that you're separate, not part of the oneness, that's your choice. She's not going to come in and say, no, that's not true. You can't believe that anymore. You got to believe this. That would be a thought dictator. That would be very unloving. And so she's not going to do that. So now, when we say, okay, unseen therapist, I've got this larger issue. Please take care of it. Behind that larger issue are typically things that you have, details that you've forgotten, repressed, don't want to look at, feel guilty about, would rather sweep under the rug. Some of this you're aware of, some of this you're not, etc. So we go to specific events because those are ways that we can start getting down to the details, and we can start digging out some stuff. Oh, I'd forgotten about that. Oh yeah, this little detail and that little detail. And now we've discussed them, we've got them front and center, and we're putting them on the table. So that's the major a purpose for those. It's also the major purpose for our reframes that we talked about the last time or two. Okay, reframing can also do a very similar thing. Okay. Was that a good answer?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's more for me to think about, just because I come from a history of prayer where you could just pray about like I have a back injury, and you pray and you ask God to heal the back injury. And sometimes people really have healings that way without necessarily, but maybe it's just all out.
Well, yeah, and that would be the way we would explain it here. It's just there's not a bunch of hidden stuff back there, but also all too often. People will pray for these general things. Dear God, I want a better job. Dear God, I want a better relationship. Dear God, this, dear God, these generalized type things. They seem specific, but they're not.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the dear God, I want a better relationship. Well, okay, you may get it. Okay. But better to go for, why am I not having my good relationships?
Sure. Yeah.
Why do they start and then stop? Why do I tend to blow them apart?
Right.
Why? Okay. Now we're getting into stuff that goes down to specific events, things in your life.
Definitely. That all makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you, Billy.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. Okay. Hold on a second here. Let me mute. And okay. There's one more here. Erwin, I'll unmute you and then we're going to move on.
Hi.
Hi,
Can you hear
Erwin.
me?
Yeah.
Hey. I had a very interesting thing happen. As you know, I have really intense physical issues going on. And I've tried all kind of things. I've worked on every memory I could find from my childhood. And I've been doing this activity that you just did, and nothing ever comes up. And this time, when I did it, immediately I got a specific event. And it was a specific event that I've never worked on because there's so much shame around it. I just never even, I remembered it, but I never thought about it.
Yes.
So I wrote it down, and I said, okay, what else is there? And it was the only thing that kept coming up over and over again. And I think it was really interesting. So after this, I was going to say this show, this webinar, I'm gonna work on it. But it's great. It had everything in it. It has shame and guilt, and it's a really good specific event.
Yeah, and let me just emphasize something you said early on in this, that you, I forgot what it was that you said.
I've done this before. Is that the?
Well, no, I know you've done it, but you and I've worked before on these things. Well, I forgot what I was going to say, but that's okay. That's okay. All right. Thanks, Erwin. All right. Okay, now we have some questions that people have asked that I want to address. Sherry, do you have anything more on what we've just done?
Well, I just wanted to mention, I guess, regarding Kristen's comment, it would be so nice if we could just say, please remove my problem. The reason that we have our anxieties, our physical issues, it's to help us look at something that we need to look at, to come to a higher awareness of. And so it's serving us in that way. And we call upon Unseen Therapists, and we'd love for her just to remove the external problem. And she does not work at that level. That's called the level of effect. And she works at the level of cause. So she is always asking us to look at what is behind the physical issue or the anger at so-and-so. And so that's where she does her work. So that's why we can't just say, come in and fix my arm.
Well, and sometimes you'll come in and fix the arm. Okay.
Yeah, sometimes, yes. But I think maybe we've already put our stuff on the table, perhaps already looked at it, and maybe there just is one little thing that she can come in and clear. But I feel like we've perhaps already done the majority of work. And we bring her in, or maybe we have a new way of looking at something, that we didn't see before, and then that's the key to unlock the healing of the arm. But even if you go to a doctor and you have a sore arm and you've got this big overcoat and you ask the doctor, please heal my arm, the doctor will want you to show him to get underneath, to look at the arm, to look at the problem, to look at the cause. You won't be able to keep that coat on and just say, well, can't you heal it, even though I'm not going to show it to you. Unseen Therapist wants you to show her what is really the problem.
Or maybe better stated, she wants you to show yourself.
Of course.
Kind of thing. But
yes.
I'm going to digress for a moment because something you said triggered something that I just want to pass on. Somebody sent me a link to a YouTube video, and so I watched it. And here was the fellow sitting there, and he was one of these fellows, he had a nice long beard, and the kind of fellow that meditates most of his life, a Swami-looking type fellow, but without the headgear and all that. Just a meditative kind of fellow. And he was talking philosophically. And he says, and he was trying to draw a distinction between his way of going about healing, which, by the way, parallels ours, okay, and that of medicine. And while not criticizing either side or anything like that, he pulls this up. He says, if you really want to know what makes a cat work, what's really going on with the cat, why the cat is sick or ill or has problems, etc., you work at becoming the cat. You become the cat. And then if you can become the cat, now you can get some sense of what's going on. Okay. He says medicine, on the other hand, takes the cat and cuts it all up in little pieces, and they think that they want to look at the little pieces, and that tells them what's wrong. It's a very different approach, So I just thought I'd mention that, okay, for whatever it's worth. Now, I have a question here that you and I did not discuss, Sherry. So I'm just going to throw it out there, and then you can comment, or I can comment, etc. Anyway, this fellow wrote to me, and he was talking about working with children. In his case, he has a 45-year-old bipolar son, and he really can't work with him, the son, because the son lacks respect for his mother and his family, and for him, the father, and so on. I mean, he's seeing a psychiatrist. There's a bunch of drugs going on, and they don't seem to be doing anything. What can I do? That's the question. Okay. And so we've had this sort of question before, and I think it's very important to answer these things even repetitiously, because the more you hear it, the more it embeds. But okay, this also falls in the category of a young child, who's not even able to speak with you, but yet is having some kind of problems. It falls in lots of categories where maybe somebody's in a coma, somebody is nonverbal, or somebody is so disabled they cannot speak or communicate, and this kind of thing. It falls into lots of categories. What do you do in that case? And the answer is you do it surrogately. Okay. Now, surrogately basically means you become the other person. That fits into the little metaphor I just gave you. You become the other person. You ask unseen therapists what's going on here. You get some specific events. You get some pointers to work on. And then you start working on them on yourself as though you were that person. Now, I've got to back up here a second. There are some people who are empaths, and to become someone else ends up with them having that other person's headaches, problems, and whatever, okay? So in that case, you can just put the person out there and share with the person if you want to. But anyway, using the idea of becoming the other person. So now we become the other person, and one of the things that happens in there is not only can we provide benefits for that other person, even though we are not able to communicate with lots of details and that we might like if we were able to have this kind of communication, we can still get quite a bit done. And when you do that, you are sharing love with someone else, and you cannot share that love unless you have it. And when you share it, you don't lose it. You don't send it to somebody and don't have it yourself. You share it because you already have it. And by sharing it, you are increasing it in yourself. You are indeed likely to start taking care of your own issues. Fascinating piece. But the more we can do this for others, and we've even had webinars on this topic, the better is as far as I'm concerned. So that's my answer. Sherry, do you have anything else?
No, that often works beautifully. I've done surrogate work. I was even in the room with the person, and I decided to work on them, and I didn't tell them. And all of a sudden, they looked at me and they said, "Are you doing something to me?"
Yes.
And I said, "Oh, I was caught. Actually, I am." And they said, "Well, it feels great. Keep doing it."
Okay.
So,
All right.
surrogate work is a wonderful thing.
All right. Now, I think one of our participants, here's Jim Pasco. He wants to say something. So let me unmute Jim. All right, Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. This is a big question for me, and I wanted to ask it later, but I get stuck here on the idea of becoming the other person.
Okay.
I'm not quite clear on that. I mean, I understand the whole concept of oneness, and reading from the Course, you recognize your oneness with the one who calls for help, but how do you and you do this on your videos, how do you become the other person? And what is it, a visual thing? Is it a kinesthetic thing? How do you become one?
Well, that's a good question, and Sherry might have a different answer than I have. I never even thought about how you become one. I just do it. But let's take that apart for the moment. You're going to be teaching me now because I have to now figure out what it is I did. So if I want to become you, for example, I simply close my eyes. I might see you in my mind's eye, your physical body, because I know what you look like. Sometimes I don't even know what people look like. But then I just sort of, I don't know, how do you say it? I just sort of blend into your body. I become Jim. Okay. Now that doesn't mean I become Jim and I know everything there is to know about Jim, and I know your past history, and I know every ache and pain in your body, and who you like and don't like, and I don't mean it in that sense. I mean it. I've just sort of moved into your body. Okay. Or your body has moved into mine either way. That's probably not a very good answer because I don't know how to do it. Sherry, help me out.
I think I kind of just do it too, but if I'm working with somebody and they tell me they're very angry about thus and such, some sort of incident, I can fairly easily close my eyes and become the person who is angry about thus and such an incident. I forget me and my issues. I am now them and concerned about what it is that we're working to release. And I can feel the anger that they're feeling or something similar. And I just become the person who has that anger about whatever. And I don't think about my stuff and who I am. And I can slide into that fairly easily.
Yeah, now you and I have had a lot of experience here. So, and Jim asked a superb question.
Mm-hmm.
It never occurred to me somebody might have some difficulty just doing it. You know? So maybe if I said I imagine doing it, that would be a bridge word. Does that help, Jim? Imagine doing it?
Well, yes, it does. I mean, it helps. And I can consider all. I just don't know. I'm just stuck on becoming one with the other person, or becoming the other person. The oneness issue is easier to understand for me than it is to become the other person. I don't know. I just sort of stuck on that.
Well, so am I.
Because it's the key concept in our work here.
Yeah, we've got a comment here from Josue Rodriguez. Maybe he's going to give us some wisdom. Hold on a minute. Josue, are you there?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of have my experience. And the first way I practiced this was when I first learned about surrogate EFT. And there was this kid on a plane that would not stop crying. And he was literally annoying everybody. And I just felt so sorry for the mom. The way I imagined it, it was like I was the baby. I did not fuse with the baby. I just felt that I had the same issue as the baby. And so I sort of assumed that his crying was my crying. It was me crying. So after I tapped on the plane, I felt the baby getting calmer and calmer and going to sleep. And so I felt I was getting calmer and calmer and going to sleep. It's sort of a fusion of whatever the other person is stating that they're feeling. And now I'm sort of doing the same thing with Optimal EFT, where it's not that I am the other person, it's that I sort of assume that their issue is mine, and I work on it on me to provide relief for them.
Okay. Yeah, and that would be a very practical way to do it, as far as I'm concerned. It's, I've done the same with the babies many times. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got probably an 80% success rate. Sometimes I strike out, but most of the time, yeah, they quiet right down. Okay,
Right.
but in the baby example, and this is probably the first time I ever tried to do anything surrogately. It was years ago. But I tried to imagine myself, if I am that baby, why am I sitting here crying? Am I hungry? Well, probably not, because mom's aware of that and she's got the bottle or the breast or whatever that may be necessary, in this case. So then I thought, well, okay, maybe my ears are popping. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my only way to express it. So I would imagine my ears popping, or maybe I'm annoyed, by some noises that in the airplane that are scary to me, the little baby or something like. I would imagine these things, and then tap, 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 tap in those days, and we would get some results. Okay. So maybe, Jim, what you can do is imagine having the issue of the other person as a stepping stone into just being the other person. Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
All of this helps because we're discussing it as a group, as you said
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
But it's just a concept that and I see it on your videos in the course. It's you become the other person.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, no, good.
Stop talking about it helps.
You know, people have to shake me sometimes and let me know what it is I need to do. But I see a lot more hands. I love it when we have everybody or lots of people participating. So I'm going to mute you, Jim. Thank you. And I'm going to mute you. Whoops. Oh, I didn't. Wait a minute. I'm going to mute you, Josue. And now I'm going to call on Odette. Let me say, first of all, I see Odette and Kristen here. If anybody else had raised their hand, I may have inadvertently unraised your hand. So if you've raised your hand and you don't see it raised anymore, let me know. Okay, Odette.
Hi.
Hi.
The problem of becoming the other person, there are times I can't do it. Sometimes it's very easy to just think I am them. But just the fact that we are all one, if I found sometimes my head gets in the way, and as long as I can just go to the point where I accept, I know we're all one. I've got no problem with the oneness idea, and accept that therefore, if I'm working on me, I'm working on them. And don't push it any further than that. Or demand to feel things or think I ought to imagine it. It seems to work just as well without my head interfering.
Yeah, good, very good point, Odette. Okay, big hug, kiss for you, and all of that. Okay, Odette is from Scotland, by the way. So, yeah. So we can get too much into this as well. We can get our head can interfere because we want to quote do it right, whatever do it right means. Okay, so we've got to get in there. We've got to exactly feel, just what they would feel under certain circumstances. And I don't get that at all. I mean, if I'm going to become you, Odette, and you have a headache, I don't get a headache. I just become you. Okay. And I'm really looking at, okay, so I've got this headache, which I don't really feel. What might be behind it, kind of thing. And so, I mean, that's just how I do that. But I don't get my head in the way. I don't have this checklist and bullet points that all have to occur before I'm doing it. Okay. Thank you, Odette. Okay. And now, Kristen. Whoops, where are we? Kristen.
Hi again.
Hi.
Yeah, just a quick comment on this too. I don't know if this is helpful at all, but maybe a bridge as well. I think the way I think about it when I'm working with someone else in the trying to become them situation, I'm more so working with my experience and interpretation of whatever I think is going on. So Gary, if you stubbed your toe, for example, I might be thinking, or I might be interpreting or thinking about what you're feeling and feeling into my own energy field, my own disturbance around what I think that is. Mm-hmm. And basically clearing my own disturbance and then having a pure focus or awareness on you and what you're perceiving as the problem then makes me a very clear channel. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, and that's a good idea. Often if I'm having some kind of a issue myself, physical or whatever, as I'm working with you, my client, my issues show up. It is not unusual for me to be working with a client and all of a sudden, bing, I'm writing down something about something else that is
right.
It's affecting me. But at the same time, and I've said this so many times, we all have the same issues, only the details are different. Mm-hmm. I'm recognizing that when I'm dealing with your issue, even though it seems so much different than mine, mm-hmm. I mean, you've got a relationship issue with a boyfriend or something, and that's not my issue at all. I've got a sore elbow. Okay.
Right.
We still, at the core of all these things, we've got guilt, anger, grief, unresolved emotional stuff showing up in these.
Sure.
With different details. Okay. So.
Certainly. I'm thinking if I'm looking at you and you're having it and I'm focused on you I have the notion of what it is, but I'm very clear in my awareness with you, then that's where like the healing can come through that way. You know what I'm saying? So when I think about becoming, I'm really thinking about clearing my own disturbance around what I think is going on.
Yeah. Okay. And use it as a launching pad for that. I mean, it's an excellent use, so. All right. Great. Thanks, Kristen. And let me see. Now, I think Monique is here. Monique, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand. Are you here, Monique? Let me see if you're even here. Monique. There's Monique. Can you raise your hand? Well, here, you don't have to raise your hand. I will just unmute you, Monique. Okay, you are unmuted. Can you speak?
Yes.
Oh, Monique and Inez are both here. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi.
All right. So the three of us had a conversation here a while back, a week ago or so, and while we discussed the issues and so on, what I wanted to do here was sort of go over them again for the benefit of our audience, and I also wanted to check out with you guys how you're doing now. The basic issues was that Inez, who's Monique's daughter, had a relationship issue. She, at one point, used the unseen therapist very successfully, but then at another point, not much happened, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there was also an issue of when you start to get into things, there's a tightness in the throat that seemed to not want to go away and get in the way. If I didn't, you say it in your words, would you?
Yeah. Well, each time I get anxious or try to work on pretty much any specific event, I get the tightness in my throat. And even if the event itself is pretty much resolved, the tightness will not go away. Even if I do several rounds of tapping or optimal EFT, it won't go. But when I stop thinking about it, half an hour later, it will dissolve.
Okay. Now, I'm sure Sherry will have some thoughts on this, but to me, the fact that the throat issue keeps showing up and keeps showing up and keeps showing up is a very useful barometer. It's a very useful clue that there's something more that you haven't dealt with yet.
Yeah, I agree.
You agree, or what did you say?
I know that there's more under the table.
Okay, all right. So, but there is a big fat clue. When something doesn't resolve like this, it means you haven't gotten to the real cause. You have repressed something, you have forgotten something, there's something you don't want to look at. I mean, there's whatever it is. We don't know what it is now. That's one reason why our earlier example of the movie screen and looking for the way issues are, you could put on your screen the question, what's causing my tight throat? And do that a few times and see what comes up. That may be pointing, to that issue.
Yeah.
So, to me, the fact that a given, particularly physical issue, that just doesn't seem to want to go away, is actually I consider it a benefit because it keeps telling us, you're not there yet.
How long does it take to get the answer, Gary?
Say it again, Monique.
How long does it take to get the answer?
That's an interesting question, and I'm going to answer it with something you probably don't like. It'll take as long as it takes for you to be ready.
Oh. How do you get ready instantly?
Well, you can ask unseen therapists what the thing is and then pay attention. Let me give you, this is not necessarily your thing. I'm going to give an example here, okay? Let's say someone did something that they were they feel very guilty about. Okay. And they did it at age 9 or something, okay? Or whatever age but they did it and they go, oh my God, why did I do that? Oh, terrible me. I should never have done that. Why did I lose my temper? Why did I do this? Why did I steal? Whatever it is I did, I carry that on, and it is so big. It is so big. I don't want to tell anybody about it. I don't want to tell a therapist about it. I don't even want to bring it up myself. And I've gotten to the point where I don't even have to deal with it now because I've repressed it so well, I hardly ever even remember it, I think, even though it seethes under the surface. Okay, it's still there. Now, I don't know if that's your issue or not, but that's the kind of thing that we withhold from unseen therapists. We're also withholding it from ourselves. We may not have any awareness of it at all. That's why it's good to ask unseen therapists on this movie screen, what's the deal here, okay? Sherry, what do you think?
Well, it's that we may be withholding. We're not open to seeing it another way. Something that needs to happen hasn't yet happened. But I think this is an interesting point when we say not much happened. When we call upon the unseen therapist, the power of the universe, something always happens. But we have a judgment that success means it happens immediately. I open my eyes and I feel better. I'm not angry anymore. My shoulder doesn't hurt anymore. And that may not be. Success could be that something will happen. You might get a phone call. Something may occur in the next hour, the next day, the next week, hopefully not the next month, where you are now able to have another piece of the puzzle. You can see things from a higher place, in a different place, and then the healing occurs. So I just would like to point out, beware the temptation to say when we come out of a round of optimal EFT, well, nothing happened. Because I believe things do happen, but in her time, not necessarily our time.
Yes. And if I can add something.
Sure.
I did my personal procedure list, and now I'm kind of stagnating on a lot of them. But what
I'm sorry. You did your list, and then what? Say it again, please.
They all came down
to
3, 4, but they won't move anymore. So what I noticed that is very, very interesting is I don't try to choose myself a specific event, but specific events will pop up one day or another spontaneously, events that I hadn't even thought of before. And I think it's the unseen therapist sending them at the right time rather than me choosing which ones I should work on before. Yeah.
Yeah, I would herald that. That's the kind of thing that tends to happen as you're a little higher up, as you start climbing the stairway to miracles. That kind of thing happens with me a lot. I will ask a question of unseen therapist. What do I do about so and so? Okay, something like our movie screen, and I may not get something right away. And I've said this many times on these webinars, but I'm just going to say it again. I can be talking to somebody, I can be talking to Sherry, I can be talking to a friend of mine, I can be talking to a client or something, and they will say something, and it will stand out almost like they're yelling it. And that, to me, I have lots of experience here now, that's the unseen therapist saying, now I got you when you're listening. Okay. And so it shows up there. It can happen in something that I'm reading. All of a sudden I'm reading and here comes a sentence and of course, kind of thing. So it happens in all these different ways, but we need to be aware of these possibilities. Very helpful, Inez. Now, when your things go down to 3 or 4 and stay there, that's also a clue to me that there's something further underneath those things. They are bouncing off of something in the past, okay? And so we need to know what that is. And so it's good that you get down to 3s and 4s and level off, okay? We're saying, hey, we got some more freedom for you. But we've got a mystery, and we're trying to solve our mysteries and so on. Go ahead, Monique or
I have a
Inez.
question. Before we were talking about surrogate.
Uh-huh.
What if, and we talked about the unseen therapist and free will, right?
Yes.
What if your surrogate person's free will doesn't want your surrogate stuff?
And they can block it.
Oh, but what if they don't know you're doing it?
That's one of the disadvantages of surrogate work, in that you don't have the ability to counsel and dig and things like that. But you can still see. If I think I'm running into this, okay, I can now go to my movie screen. I can become the person, the resistant person that I'm doing this surrogately for, or the nonverbal person, or whatever that may be. And I'm asking for pointers. Okay, so they tell me. I end up with a memory that there's a little blonde girl and a little redheaded boy, and they're walking on a mountain. Okay, I made that up. All right. So the next time I'm speaking with the resistant person, I don't have to necessarily get into some therapy mode if they don't want to be there, for example. I can just say, I had this thought the other day. And there was you and this little girl, and you're walking on the mountain, or as you were young, etc. Does that ring a bell? I was just curious. And now they can start talking about it. Well, maybe I'm not on target. Okay, so we strike out. But maybe I am on target, and they can start talking. And now I can get more information from them, which I could then use surrogately. Now we're getting into more sophisticated parts of this, but once you start really understanding how the pieces of this work, then you can be very creative with them. It's like you got the pieces to a puzzle, but there are thousands of ways to put them together with thousands of pictures, okay? It's an interesting set of puzzle pieces, okay? It's something like that. Does that answer your question for you, Monique?
Yeah. So there's hope, that's good.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And maybe someday we will find out just the exact way to do it, and the engineer will rule, okay? And we'll reduce the whole thing down to a mathematical formula. Do this formula and all your problems are solved.
Exactly.
Anything else you guys want to talk about?
No, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for sharing. Very, very nice. Very, very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay. Sorry, the time is running on. I've got a couple more questions here we can do next time. Do you have anything else you want to add before we close up here? Or if anybody else has something you want to raise your hand, please do it. Let me see. Okay. Now's the time to do it if you want to raise your hand and ask something. Go ahead, Sherry.
On a positive note, to talk to Monique's question, if the person is resisting and you're sending loving intention and their free will says no or not at this time, it's highly likely that you have at the very least planted a seed. And so maybe they didn't accept that gift at the moment. They didn't want to, it wasn't their time, they need more understanding, but who knows, at some point it will be accepted, perhaps down the road. So it's not that you did your work in vain. You sent your loving intention, and it's their free will to accept it now or not, but who knows down the road when they might accept that gift of yours.
Okay, thank you.
And when I said they could block it, that doesn't mean they block everything. They may block pieces of it. We just don't know. But that doesn't mean we don't do surrogate work. I mean, if that's the only way we can help somebody, certainly we do it, because we can often get good results. It just may be more efficient if we can get more interface with them, so. Okay, now, with that in mind, we're going to close this up for the day. I'm noticing here that I've got 3 chats that I'll be looking at when we're done. So, wait a minute, Josue has one more thing here. Let's talk to Josue. Go ahead, Josue.
It's just sort of a technical question. Last week I was working on something that happened to my left ear. And I remembered the specific event that sort of triggered this, I don't want to hear this anymore. But when I got sick, I spent literally 10 days in bed, not being able to walk. I completely lost balance. I could not hear, I could not drink, I could not eat. It was really bad. So when I remembered the specific event and I started trying to invoke the unseen therapist to help me deal with it, I got terrified because I was terrified that it would sort of bring me back to those 10 days that I spent in bed completely sick. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for myself here, and I'm just going to stop. But I have been unable to go back because every time I think about it, I'm terrified.
Okay, good point. I love you guys' questions. Okay, and what comes up for me, and Sherry may have another thought on this, but what comes up for me is here is a beautiful use for the groups we are now forming, because you can give your group at least the highlights of the issue and let them do it for you and see how far you go and see if it takes the edge off the terrifying aspect of it. My guess is it will take the edge off of the terrifying aspect of it, at least to the point where now you can get into it and get into more detail, put more on the table, and so on. The other thing to do is just to tiptoe up on it yourself. And that is, you would let unseen therapists know, hey, I got this specific event, okay, and I just don't want to get into it. But, can you help me out a little bit here, because I don't want to be terrified about it. And so you're offering some of it to her, okay, and see what happens. And if you're a little easier on it, I'll offer a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more. Okay. I call that sneaking up on the problem.
Yeah, like that.
Okay. Sherry, any thoughts?
No, that's what I would have suggested. Just ask her to release you from the terror, and maybe do a round where you visualize her holding you, and you know that you're doing that. You're looking at it with her. She's holding your hand while you're looking at this, so maybe that will lessen the terror. You're not having to do this alone.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we're going to close up for today. Now, I want to mention this chat thing here. If you have questions that we haven't answered, or if you're one of those people who would rather not, have your voice and picture seen on a public thing like that, write your question down for me. Also, tell me what you liked about today, what you didn't like. Tell me about today. If you want to tell me about what you saw on your movie screens, or if you had problems doing that, any of that, I'm going to leave this open for another 5 or 10 minutes, so you can click on the chat and just start letting me know. That material is essential to me, whether the results are good, bad, or otherwise. It's essential to me to make this as efficient as we can make it. So, for everybody, my big hug. Sherry, thank you. See you next time.